Everybody, and welcome to Chain No More. Thanks for joining us today. We have an amazing show today, and two people who really know what it's like to form a step family and who understand the challenges and joys of it. You'll learn a great deal today about how to prepare to live in a successful step family, and for those of you who are already in one, you will learn many tools to help you and your family succeed. They've lived it, they've coached it, they've spoken to it, and they will be a blessing to you on the show. You know, I remember when I was working with single-parent families for 12 years that single parents were usually on the lookout for that potential new relationship. Maybe someone to help them with the kids, take some of the financial burden off of them, fill their arms, and hopefully make life easier. Most of the time, they would step into a new relationship, and before long, they'd step out of them. A few of them went on as far as getting married, but had no clue what to expect with issues of exes, children who acted out, and wanted their mommy and daddy to get back together. Last week we talked with Dory Pulse about this. You can download that show at www.toginet.com/shows/chain-no-more. My guests today were two of the people I learned the most from concerning the life of step families and all that includes. You know, I remember sitting in their workshops, my eyes wide open, writing pages and pages of notes and feeling like I could sit there for hours just soaking information in. You know, I think I remember going to dinner with them and some other people and still asking questions. I could never get enough of what they were talking about because I didn't understand it. It was like a box was opening for me of a world I knew nothing about, and I am so grateful to my guests today. They told us about their experiences as a step family, what they learned, and with their expertise in education, they did a superb job of giving us the helpful information we needed to take back to our ministries. I am forever grateful to them, and I love them, and I have the highest respect for them. Listeners, I am delighted and honored to introduce you to my guests for today's show, Gordon and Carrie Taylor. Hi, Gordon and Carrie. Let's talk.
Hi, Robin.
We're glad to be here.
Thank you for saying yes. I'm so excited to have you here. I know a little bit of your story, but I would like you to just briefly tell us how the Lord led you both to develop the ministry you have now. What is your story?
Well, my story starts personally when my first marriage of 18 years broke up and my family disintegrated. I was the reverse back even then, and I stayed at the house and kept 3 teenage boys. And that was a very strong and very exciting, if you will, growth period in my life. And single parenting for about 8.5 years. I went out and tried to find out why my family had broke up and what my responsibility was in it. And as a part of that, I went into counseling, into workshops, conferences, joined a singles group, went through divorce recovery, and later led the singles group for about 4 years as a lay minister. And during that period of time, it was growth-oriented, but it was stressful, which God teaches you during that time, and actually was, unbeknownst to me, was leading me toward ministry.
Well, obviously, mine came out of a divorce, and what I did, I was in business, the film business, with my first husband, and ended up buying him out when we divorced. And then I did a 2-part series on marriage, divorce, and remarriage, why marriages broke up, how to get through the divorce process, how to come up with non-negotiables if you're going to head into another relationship. So in this series, I was interviewing people like me, people that were already in step families. I was dealing with professionals that worked with people like me. So it was really inclusive healing in my life. Plus, I did what Gordon did. I went to workshops, went to divorce recovery, which we believe is so very important before you start running into another relationship. It's important to grieve that loss. So I had put together this film series, and the Southern California single adult pastors from the large churches had a quarterly meeting. And they asked me to come in and preview that for their ministries. And Gordon, being a lay pastor to singles, showed up.
Well, and I was a little late, and I came in the back door, and as all of you single again people know, you develop antennas after a while. You're on the lookout for Miss Wright or Mr. Wright. And I came in the back door and saw this good-looking lady up front, independent. She was the star of the show, very talented, energetic, all of the above. So my goal became to get my business card to her. Unfortunately, about a dozen other guys had the same goal that I did.
It was a good day.
So I did get my card in her hand, but when I called her business a few days later, they didn't even know who I was.
But I took a risk. I accepted his business date.
Well, and fortunately, she did,
Okay.
and I was driving my midlife crisis single again sports car, so that helped a little bit. But in order to get a second date with her, I had to buy her movies, so that sort of set the stage for our marriage from that point on.
Well, obviously, we did connect, and he had done a lot of the same work personally that I had done, which not everybody does after they're divorced. So we connected at that level and really checked each other out, doing tough stuff instead of all the fun, fall in love, oozy-goozy stuff, although there's a little bit of that too. But I wanted to know what kind of character this man had and what kind of goals and spiritual life he exhibited. And so we did sign up for each other, and that was over 29 years ago. So I think we're going to make it. And he brought 3 boys, 21, 23, and 25, and I brought a 14-year-old that made up for all of them.
Right. And going back to ministry, that we believe, and we've illustrated that life will send you tough times, and they really struggle. But if you're faithful and if you head into those, work through them, learn from them, that then God is free to open ministry opportunities for you, and that's exactly what happened.
And when we got married, we knew we were a high-risk couple, just from the statistics. So we went to the library and researched all we could on stepfamilies, and there was a lot more than people thought. It just wasn't available in the church. There was, about the time we started, there was another couple on the East Coast, and we were the first on the West Coast. And so we learned all of that for our own survival. Plus, we were both public speakers, so when we got involved in a large blended family fellowship, we started teaching the educational part of the survival skills and to understand the difference between a first marriage and a subsequent marriage. And what we say is, a first marriage is an apple, a second marriage is an orange. But most remarried couples go running into a remarriage thinking it's going to be a better apple. They're going to heal everybody's wounds. Everybody's going to love one another.
Yeah. I think the thing that sticks out right now to me is that you guys went through your painful times of the divorces and stuff, but you didn't just isolate yourself for a long period of time, I don't think, and you got out there and you got involved, and I love that about you. You know, I think my eyes are still wide open. I'm still writing notes when you're talking. I just appreciate you so much. What can you define? Let's just start basic. Define what a step family actually is.
It's a married couple, and we literally underline the word married because there's so much cohabitation out there. But it's a married couple where one or both bring a child or children of any age into the relationship, whether or not they reside with the married couple.
Now, we emphasize marriage because it provides what the children need, which is commitment and stability. And all too often, cohabitation nowadays is so rampant that the researchers really have tagged cohabitation with children as a pseudo or false step family, because it in turn does not provide for commitment, does not provide for stability, so there's some real struggles that can arise there. The other word that we like to emphasize is reside, because we work with a lot of older remarried couples, and their response is, well, my child is not living with me. They're on their own, they have their own families, and so we're not a step family, and we politely and respectfully correct them and say you are, because adult children can have very, very strong reactions to the remarriage of an older mother or father.
And plus, these children don't go away. They get married, they have children, and then there's grandchildren, so the system is only enlarging. It doesn't go away. And he's right. We have watched older children adults really mess with the new relationships, because if you think about it, they have a longer history. The older the child is, the longer history they have with this family. And plus their brain is developed and it's wrapping around their experiences. So it's like, wow, you just cut my family in two. But people aren't thinking along those lines.
Yes, we have 1 minute to go, and till the first break, I can't even believe it. But the deal that everything that you said is so true, and what I saw in ministry as well. Can you just tell me is there a difference between a step family and a blended family? I mean, we have 45 seconds, but can you do it in that, or you want to wait?
Well, blended is almost a cruel word that researchers say, because it's so much what we desire to have happen, but it's not initially happening. So we use the word step and try to reprogram that into a positive as opposed to a negative.
And all the research refers to us as step families, and I've never heard a little boy say, I'd like you to meet my blended mother or my blended father.
That just sounds funny. Well, listeners, as you can hear, these people know what they're talking about. I love listening to them. So we're going to go to the first break, and when we get back, we'll just keep on going with Gordon and Carrie Taylor. One of the things I really want to know, what are the top reasons for re-divorce, or when a second or subsequent marriages fail? What are the main reasons?
Well, there are three major ones. There are many in addition to that, but the three major ones are children. And what we mean by that, it's not the children per se, it's our inability to deal with them effectively and minister to their needs as children of divorce. And secondly, money and stuff. We bring a lot more wounds financially from a divorce or a death, and that, if we don't do some planning, we're in big trouble. And then the exes are usually apart, one or both of them, in causing friction, or we don't, again, know how to handle them effectively, so we let them be a bigger problem than many times they need to be.
Well, and there's a statistic, I have trouble with that word, from the largest family law firm in Orange County in Southern California that says you have a 75% chance of returning to court in the first 2 years over child custody or finances. And believe me, we have seen that. I mean, I've been in step-family ministry now for 32 years, and I've seen that, see that on a regular basis.
In my naivety, when I first started in this, I thought that once the court dates were done and the papers were filed and signed and the court and the child custody, that was it. It was law. And I quickly found out that that's not true, that at any time someone can go right back into court and just start that buzzsaw and they all get thrown into it again, which is so painful. I have a lot of friends now that are in step families and single families that I live this with them. I mean, I see the hurt of this. One of the biggest issues, I know this is just so huge, and I remember your presentation on this, as a matter of fact. One of the biggest issues I heard from step families about the step parents' role in discipline. And Gordon, I remember you hiding behind her in the presentation when she did the discipline thing. How should that work in your opinion?
Well, I hide behind her a lot, but that aside, what it amounts to is that initially the step-parent should not be involved in discipline at all. That really the bio-parent is actually single parenting, but doing it in a remarried situation. And if you think about it, one of the newest relationships is between the step-parent and the step-child, and there's no legal rights, there's no biology, and there's just barely an investment emotionally in each other. And what happens to the child is what we think is a good thing in remarriage, they look at it like, I don't know where I belong again, and where do I fit in? And so we really have more struggles than we anticipate.
Well, and they already have another biological parent, and that is whether they're dead or alive. And even if that parent is not on the scene, he or she has disappeared, and a lot of people think, well, that's good. We don't have to worry about that person. And I say, your child is going to grow up. The brain's going to wrap around that there is another father. Why isn't he here? What happened? And you will have to deal with that in time.
In fact, we recommend to the step-parent that they emphasize and focus on relationship development first before they even get into any thought of discipline, because the step relationship formation is the barometer that we use to measure how the family is coming together.
Now, what does that mean? That means I learn about my stepchild or children. If they're young, maybe I spend some time reading a book, doing a puzzle, tying their shoes. If they're a little older, I take them to school. I show up at their events. I don't make myself obnoxious, but I show some interest in learning about them. Many step-parents think, well, they need to be interested in me. No. You've got to make yourself a human magnet for that child so they want to have a relationship with you. So you're the good cop, and the bio parent's the bad cop.
Well, I know like single moms that I knew a lot of, they just wanted someone to help them with that part, the discipline part, and I would bring back your information to them, and it did make a difference. I know another one is finances, and that's a huge issue that can cause turmoil. So what is the best way for a step couple to handle finances, whether they have a lot of money or just a little?
Well, the biggest thing, we approach this from two directions, the tangibles and the intangibles. Now, the tangibles are the stuff we bring with us, the amount of money we have or make, or the furniture, maybe a home, whatever.
Debts, assets, insurance, credit cards.
And then the intangibles are things like our value system, power and control issues, the styles of spending and saving, and the big one is trust. When you've been divorced, trust has taken a big hit, and all too often this lack of trust, and this is a key factor, if you don't disclose prior to getting married, it becomes a trust issue. And if you think about it, finances really applies to just about everything that happens in the step family.
Absolutely. And what we did is we hit that ahead of the marriage. We went to an attorney, and some people don't like this. We did what they call a prenup or an antenuptial, but we looked at it as a financial plan. He put us on an 8-year plan for our money to come together. We do not advise people to throw it all in one pot, and that we watched that totally backfire. But they can come up with a plan where they will bring at some point their money together. Now, some couples never do. If they get married older in life, they have older children. We've watched horror stories happen with inheritances. In one personal friend where her father married again and left his money to his new wife instead of her, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know, the wife died first, the new wife died first, and then the dad died. So then that's when she found out she was going to be totally cut out. And it had nothing to do with the money and the stuff. It had everything to do with Dad just tossed me out for this new person.
Yeah, it's so messy, isn't it? It can just get... My husband's a CPA, and he's seen so many of these stories in his practice. It's just heartbreaking because it involves the heart so much. It's so much more than the finances, for sure.
Oh, it totally is.
Yeah.
Well, and I just want to add here, because we had a plan that freed us up to go on into the marriage and work on all the relationship development and handle all the things that were going to hit us that way. We didn't have to fight about money. And the other thing is, we actually came together in 2 years, not 8, because the trust was built as we watched each other.
Yeah, so the plan is a good thing. I think, don't we get caught up in all the hearts and flowers of love and new relationships, and we don't think of this practical stuff, and then we pay for it later. Is that's what it sounds like?
Oh, yes. That's why we love remarriage prep, and we do a lot of it where we talk about the practical things that they're not talking about when they're dating. How are you going to handle this? How are you going to handle that? Have you talked about their family's past? Have you talked about their history? And have you welcomed in their former relationships? Because it's who I am. You can't deny what I bring with me to my life. But this is another thing remarrieds want to do. They don't want to talk about the ex. They don't want to talk about anything that happened to you before them.
Oh, it's just not right. I remember coming back from workshops with you too, and back to my church and talking to pastors. We need premarital counseling, but boy, do we need remarital counseling.
Absolutely.
And we are going to talk about a little bit later in this interview. We will talk about your resources, because I'm telling you, people, that their resources are top notch. They know what they're talking about. They could help so many people in your churches that could hold a seminar, have these people there, play their DVDs. It is fascinating. It is important for the success of step families. I have another question. What's the best way for a step couple to deal with the ex-spouse? Now, I know this might take some time, so I will cut you off if I have to, and we'll come back and finish it up.
Well, in a word, carefully. This is a tightrope, what we call a tightrope, because if you get totally involved with the ex or situation and people outside your family, the family's not going to develop. But if you totally ignore them, which is a mistake, that you may get in trouble that way too. So we talk about personal growth. Carrie's the communication trainer, and she really works hard with dealing with exes.
And I believe the same sex should reach out. In other words, if my husband is reaching out to his ex, now it didn't bother me, but many new wives get very suspicious and jealous, and he's not cutting off his relationship with her. In fact, that can go for the money thing too. When a new husband is staying in contact with his ex, and maybe in the new wife's eyes he's doing too much for her, every time it's because he wants to keep that relationship sound so it doesn't interrupt his time with his kids.
And the big motivation is that conflict, be it in marriage or divorce, just absolutely shreds the children emotionally. And so we have seen over and over in our own lives, in many remarried couples, if the ex and the new husband or wife can get along, the remarried couple can get along with their ex, then it really lowers the tension on the children and allows them to function in a much more productive way.
I was the one that reached out to his ex, and we literally became friends. And then there was a Christmas where I invited the whole step family system, and she actually came. All his boys were there, their girlfriends, my family, and you name it, potpourri. And the three boys, here they were adults, could not stop thanking us enough that they could see mom and dad and the new stepmom all together and having a good time. And that started rituals of celebrating birthdays, holidays, and we still do. We've moved, but we still stay in touch, and she is part of our family, as well as the boys and their wives and their children. I mean, after 29 years, this has been an expanded system.
Maybe that's a new term you can make another video of potpourri families.
Well, here's what I've been thinking about: an integrated family.
Yeah.
It starts out potpourri, you're right, I like that, and then it moves to an integration where we finally, after a number of years, and that's key, is time, we find our places with one another, we've had a history with one another, and we know where we belong with one another.
Well, I think that's great. I deal with the kids, and I see the hurt of all of this, and if more families could do what you're talking about, I'm telling you, it would be so much easier for the kids. We're going to go to the next break now and continue on with Carrie and Gordon Taylor. Listeners, I would say that if you have anybody that you know that is in a step family, I already had some people contact me today to find out how they can download this podcast, and it hadn't even happened yet. There's just so much need. There's so much that needs to be learned about this and how to do it well. I mean, I would say that's probably the majority of families in our country today. So if you can get people to come to that podcast, please do that. It would be at www.toginet.com/shows/change no more. I want to continue on with questions for Gordon and Carrie. Here's a kind of a touchy subject. What is the best way for a step family to deal with the ex-spouse? Well, we talked a little bit about that. The bio-parent of the child. How does a child, I want to ask this question, how does a child even begin to build a relationship with a new parent, with a step-parent?
Oh, very slowly, although some children, especially youngers, can have a fantasy of what it's going to be like, and they have high expectations that don't necessarily get met. And so they can be very disappointed. But basically, to the child, it's just another huge change. And there's a title of a book we love. The wedding was great. When does Chuck leave?
Oh, wow.
They can, and what we see regularly, and it happened with my 14-year-old daughter when we got married, they can be all excited. She was excited about Gordon. She helped him propose to me. And the day of the wedding, everything changed. And we hear that regularly, that all of a sudden reality sets in. He's not going away. This is not just a party. He's moving in our territory, or I'm having to move in his, or we've just moved to a new house. Change.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and another factor is that what is a gain for us adults can be a loss for the child, and
Truly.
They are trying to determine where they belong. If I get in conflict with my stepchild's bio parent, then it puts them into what is called loyalty conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And since children have a very immature view of love, they have a bucket of love. If they give it to somebody, they don't have any to give to somebody else. And they don't have the mature concept of the more you love, the more you can love, then it automatically, that conflict or competition between step and bio puts the kids in a very, very rough, tense situation.
Plus, it impacts the step couple tremendously. At 14, when my daughter started acting out, and I sat down with her, she literally described it. She didn't use the word bucket, but it was like, well, okay, Dad got married, and she went through divorce, and her father remarried shortly after that. So she was literally processing divorce and remarriage all at once. And she said, well, Dad has a new wife, so there's less for him to love me. And now you have Gordon, so there's less for you to love me. In other words, they see there's only so much to go around. Now, here's another thing to think about. You've already demonstrated to our children that we stopped loving their father or their mother by getting a divorce.
Right.
So how can they trust us to love them? How do they know we're not going to divorce them, quote unquote? But, and this is a difficult thing. The most important thing when we teach and talk with step families is look at your life through your children's eyes. It may change some of your decisions. It doesn't have to control you, but it's something really to consider. They wonder, where do I belong? Now everybody's, it's confusing to me. I'm living in two worlds. So I'm one way with mom, I'm one way with dad. And then the parents are complaining, they're lying to me. They're telling me all this. Well, of course they are. They're surviving between these two worlds. So it's a tremendous adjustment for them. And the problem is step couples aren't encouraged to be ready for that.
This is deja vu. What you all just said right there is exactly what I remember hearing from you, and bringing it back to our families. It helped so many people. You cannot know how many people that you have presented to who have taken it back, and it has been multiplied, and thank you for that. I have another question. How do adult children respond to divorce and the remarriage of parents? I work with the adult children of divorce now with Chain No More, but I would love your opinion on that.
Well, usually it tends to go one extreme or the other. It's very accepting because they're knowledgeable, they've been kept in the loop, but it can be just as extreme the other way when, as Carrie said, they have a longer history with this, let's say, the father, and you're not going to replace my mother. We've had many, many examples of actually adult children having skills, not all positive, going in and breaking off their relationships that their bio parent has because they don't want the other parent replaced.
Well, and let's talk about your three boys. They were adults when we got married, 21, 23, and 25. They did show up. They were very courteous to me. We had fun together. when two of them ended up getting married, I was there first before the new wives were. And one of the wives said to me a number of years later, she said, if you ever wondered why the three boys were hesitant to bond with you, they didn't know if you were going to stay around. And I hadn't even thought of it that way. But as we've opened up over these years, and Gordon has on purpose spent time with his boys and his ex, just letting them talk about. In fact, they are in our DVD series. They talk about the divorce. They talk about a remarriage. But I was Dad's wife. That was it. And the oldest one was okay. The middle one is the kind that, he'll, like a middle child, want to make peace. But he's the one that would not let his wife call me his stepmother. And I wasn't. He did not live in our home. And so she would mess up and, no, it's Carrie. And then one...
Technology.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Go ahead.
Anyway, so one day she accidentally said, well, we're going to go see your stepmother. No, Carrie. We're going to see Carrie. And he says, it's okay. You can call her my stepmother. And then the oldest son in his 50s, when we moved to Oklahoma, said, no, just as I was considering her another mother figure. And then the youngest one is the one that took the hardest hit. He's very kind and respectful, and we go the deepest in conversation, but he just, stays away. So
I have a question.
Each child can have a different relationship and a different response, but again, they have seen things break up, so they don't trust marriage.
That is so, I don't think I've ever heard that each child handles it maybe in a different way. I guess that never crossed my mind. I do have a question. I don't think I got it answered last week. What if the other parent talks against you to your kids? What are you supposed to do?
Okay, that is called the parent alienation syndrome. And there has been, in addition to our resources, we're reading all the time. There is a good book out called Divorce Poison, but it's a deadly situation. In fact, I just dealt with a couple 2 days ago that are fighting that. But you have to resist the temptation to badmouth your ex back, because that just further puts the kids into a bind. And what my recommendation is you've got to work hard, you've got to work smart, and as in all step families, but what a parent says against a parent, you let the children, through your actions and behavior, see that that's not true. And over a period of time, I really believe that God will honor that if you do the right thing.
Well, this also goes along with the teenagers that want to go live where life's going to be easier. They think on them, and then you're so worried about your kid in the other parent's home. But kids watch you; they will see whose values are working for you, and they will see in your relationship and how you treat people whether what's being said about you is true or not.
And another factor is that the one that's being badmouthed needs to look at their ex and identify, is this mental illness? Is this drugs and alcohol?
Right.
Is this just pure unadulterated hate and anger? And identify where this is coming from. And the principle is, the more bizarre the behavior, the more predictable it is. And if, like the guy said, if you do it to me once, shame on you. If you do it to me twice, shame on me. So I need to learn and really be knowledgeable about the situation and the person that I'm dealing with, so I can be productive and not get blindsided.
We see people through our own lens and how we think they should behave. So when they don't do that, we're surprised. But like Gordon said, and we've walked through this with people in our own family. When they're behaving a certain way, why am I surprised? They've always been doing this. So it's my job to get creative, come up with a plan, and put myself back in that situation differently. And so I maintain control of me. I can never control anybody else, but I can certainly control me.
Thank you for answering that. I've had many parents ask me that. They don't know what the response should be. We have a couple minutes here. How long does it take for a step family to truly blend? I know you don't like that word, but how long does it take?
Well, research says 4 to 9 years if you're working very hard and very smart and educating yourself and being aware of the normal that a step family possesses, but that certainly is different than an intact family. But what I find is that people are very impatient. They want things to happen now, and they think we're all supposed to love each other. I'm supposed to think and feel the same for my stepchildren as I do my biological children. So there's a lot of pieces to put together, but basically the concept of time. And Carrie and I try to normalize the developmental cycle that the step family goes through, so to help people be a little more patient and really encourage them that they're doing the right thing and making progress.
And one of our good friends said, at least now I'm not surprised at the surprises. I know there's going to be surprises, but I don't have to be surprised.
Yeah, because the kids get older and older, and new challenges come up, and I just see such a mix of issues with families, and you try to stabilize them, you try to help them, you try to walk alongside of them. I love the kids that did nothing to deserve any of this, and
Right.
I remember DC for K, the big D, hanging on to those kids and helping them have an adult perspective and a godly perspective about all of this, and to help them take responsibility for only what they say and what they do. We have one more break, and then we'll continue on with some myths. I can't even say that word on the radio. MYTHS, myths that people have about step families. See you on the other side of the break. Hard to believe. It's the last segment of this show. I just told Carrie and Gordon I am sure I'm going to have them back. They have so much to share and so much that we can learn from them. Let's talk about some of those myths, if we could, for a few minutes here. You gave me a list of them. I just want you to talk about the ones that come to your mind. Myths about step parenting.
Well, that I'm going to go in as a stepmom, I'm going to fix everybody, and I'm going to be better than the bio mom. That's crazy.
There's war.
And that everybody's going to love everybody. I mean, I love you, I love my kids, we're all going to love each other.
Well, what we find out in a word is our expectations are unrealistic, and in many, many different areas among the ones that Carrie just mentioned. But unless we're aware, unless we're educated, unless we're prepared, our expectations are very normal to go off the chart because I've met this person, I have a partner now, someone to help, on and on and on. And then when the experience comes in under the expectation, we get ourselves set up for very negative emotions.
And when we have this apple in our mind because it's been taught, it's been preached, we don't have the orange in our mind because it's not getting taught and preached enough. I mean, it's out there, but so I'm going in thinking I've got an apple, and so it's really a mess when I realize, nope, I've got an orange. And the pain can be so great, and that's why redivorce occurs. Singleness is looking pretty good right now. I don't need this kind of trouble in my life.
Well, and what we find, too, is even the churches buy into this apple and orange concept in the sense that they are so worried about not teaching God's ideal that they put the apple label on the orange, and the remarried couple do not get their needs met, and so consequently the rate of divorce goes up, not down.
And that step parent is not going to be any different than the bio parent. We've explained that. I'm an adult, so I have rights. And that's the danger of marrying, like you mentioned earlier, for a dad or a mom. Oh, man, help's on the way. But that's one of the worst things we can do is expect this person to be a parent when there's no relationship established. Even though, we've been dating for 5 years, we've been dating for 2 years. I promise you, it will all change after the wedding.
Yeah, I wanted to add something, too, that in Chain No More, when we have our participants come into class, they share both their divorces, their remarriages and remarriages and remarriages. And what I find is that they just do not work on themselves, their personal issues, the hurts that they've lived, and they just take that right into the next relationship, and they go into it again. And then if you think about it, you have two people doing the same thing, and it piles up and piles up. And how can it be successful if you haven't worked and been healed of the stuff that have hurt you before?
Well, we're all walking wounded. None of us, got out of our family of origin alive and well with no wounds, or in and out of relationships by the time we're in a step family. So we're walking wounded, and what the brain does is Gordon steps in a previous wound. My brain blames him for creating it instead of having done the work, realizing, no, this is from the past. He just stepped in a wound. And that's another reason it's so important to know one another and know our histories.
I can do one more myth, and then I want to move on to the last parts of this, things I want to hear from you.
Okay. Children are over their loss. The children are doing great. That is a myth. Even if they look like it, what the research has and what we have observed is they call them sleeper children. And we watched this happen. 5 to 7 years down the road, the kid erupts, and all of a sudden you are, totally taken aback because it seemed like the kid was adjusting fine and loved the parent and was fitting in. And then pretty soon the kid says, nope, it's my turn for my pain.
Yeah. And being an advocate for the children, I'm sure you see this, that the adults, assuming, hopefully, that they're doing their work and they're growing and taking personal responsibility, it's easy to think that the children are doing the same thing. And research is pretty clear that the children's adjustment always lags behind the adults. And we find they use the term resilient. Yeah, well, resilient means they return to their original shape, and we all know that work with kids that they're in survival mode. They're trying to survive at mom's house or dad's house. Many of the kids don't even have their house. I don't have my house.
Right.
Okay, I would like to have you tell us, as you can tell listeners, these people have so much information to share, and they have done wonderful jobs on DVD series. Would you both, either whoever wants to, tell us about your resources and how our listeners can connect with you? This is really important.
Yes, they can go to our website, which is cgtaylor, like Carrie with the C, Gordon, and then Taylor, so cgtaylor.com. When they go there, there's a scrolling on the top. The first thing that'll come up on the scrolling banner will be 2 of our products, Designing Dynamic Step Families and Children of Divorce, The Tough Truth. They can click on those pictures, and it'll take them right to those websites where they can read more about it. On the Designing Dynamic Step Families, there's actually some previews and clips. Well, actually, in the scrolling banners, you will see YouTube. And you can click on that, and it will take you to our YouTube videos and questions that have been asked, and those would be on the blog. So there's 3 scrolling banners, one with the 2 DVDs, one that will go to YouTube, and then one to my blog. And then there's information below that that's very, explanatory.
Thank you. I did look at all your resources, too. For 1 minute, and then I'm going to finish this up, but for 1 minute, can you, either one of you, just talk a moment to our listeners from your hearts, whether they're preparing to become a stepmom or stepdad, or if they're already in one and struggling?
Well, we say basically take heart, because there are some great things that can come out of the step family. It's not without a lot of work, a lot of prayer, a lot of encouragement and support from people around you that are going through the same thing. But if you work through flexibility, step families, you learn to be flexible. You learn a lot about relationship. And personally, this is where you mature, is in relationships. And I believe deeply that that's how God designed it. So as hard as it is, it's the place that you need to be to fully mature relationally.
Well, and I would say, again, pretty much the same thing. Hang on, hang in, get help. Find good help. And if somebody doesn't understand step families, find a different counselor. So get the support you need. Get involved in a group. If you don't have one, start one and use some of the material that's available out there. And there's hope. If you have us back, I would like to share at that time some unbelievable stories and things that God has done with my ex-husband and his now 3 wives, and all the children that are involved, and what God's done with Gordon's sons and my daughter, and then we raised my granddaughter as grandparents, as parents. But we have watched God just do some amazing things that we never expected would happen in our step family.
Thank you. I would say that it is not a matter of if, but a matter of when.
Thank you.
I love doing this show because we get, I have built a network for 13 years or whatever it is, and all of these people that I'm having on this show are the people that I learned everything from, and they have helped me so much, and I know they're helping people too. We are up, I don't even know, 135,000 downloads. People need this information, and it's so
amazing.
It is amazing. I love the internet. Who knew? I don't know. We were just looking for this, so we're thrilled. Gordon and Carrie, thank you so much for sharing your story and what you've learned. I know your hope, and that's my ministry word, I know your hope is that it will encourage our listeners. And listeners, I have heard this amazing couple speak, so if you are interested in having them come to your church or conference, please contact them, get their information, get their stuff, because families need it. You know the challenges, listeners, if you are in a step family, you know the challenges, and here's a resource for you right here that can help you so much. Please remember that you can download this show and all of the others at www.toginet.com/shows/Chain No More. We're also on iTunes. Coming up, we're going to have next week is the Chain No More show will be a unique one, so don't miss it. My guest will be a woman named Pamela, who will tell you her strong testimony of an extremely hurtful past, including much of what we've already had shows about, and how God used Chain No More to completely change her. There's stories of abuse of every kind, and how she came into the class with her eyes down and the anger in her, and how God transformed her. We'll talk about how this ministry began, the process of this powerful book, and how lives are being transformed in the name of Jesus. I'd like to close in prayer quickly. Lord God, thank you so much for Carrie and Gordon. They have just helped so many people, and they will continue to. Thank you for this opportunity to have them on this show, to be able to get this information out. We want to give hope to our listeners that they don't have to continue to stay in the stuff that they're in, but they can find resources. They can find help. Lord, for their children, it's so difficult for them. Please help them to see their children for what they're living and what they hurt for, not just stay in their own crisis, but listen to their kids' hearts. Lord, thank you for giving us the information you have. Thank you for, it's weird to pray about, but thank you for putting Gordon and Carrie through what they have, because they're using their pain for good in a big way. And I thank you so much for the opportunity to have them in this show. I pray, Lord, for their ministry as they move forward, that you continue to give them such wonderfully creative ideas, and that they'll be able to minister to many, many more. Thank you, Lord God, for this wonderful time. In the name of Jesus, amen. Amen. You guys, what a blessing you are to me.
Well,
likewise.
Thank you, Robin.
I remember staring at you for the first time thinking, oh, my word, what am I getting into? You had everything so perfectly done. I was on track with you the whole way, and I've been able to use it, and I know many have. So thank you, people, for joining us. And next week will be that big show about Chain No More, so you understand where I'm coming from, where my heart is, where this is going, and the beautiful thing about Chain No More. Is there anything else? We have a minute here to go. Is there anything else that you would like to share at all about this?
Well, we just encourage people to get out among other step families and remarried couples, and don't be bashful about bringing it to your pastor, your ministry staff, and even educating yourself and training them so they in turn can minister to other people. And so it's just a ministry that, as you know, there's no end to it. It's wide open, and the field is ripe for harvest, as they say.
It is, and those videos, I've looked at them too, and I've appreciated what you put in them. So I would also say that too, Gordon, is get to your pastor, tell him what the need, let him see that, and they give him these resources. We will talk to you next week on CNM, and I thank you so much for joining us today and for listening to Gordon, Carrie Taylor, and yes, they will be back. Thank you very much. Have a great week.